William James. William James is creditor for the development of contemporary pragmatism. He took his lead from the earlier formulations of C.S. PEIRCE and molded it in his own terms. In a treatise entitled Pragmatism, James explains his theory and brings out two sides to it. On the one hand, pragmatism is a method which is identified with the empirist attitude. He insists that as a method, it does not prescribe any particular results, but merely a way of dealing with the world. What this method amounts to is roughly that distinctions carrying no practical differences are meaningless. Along with this goes a refusal to regard any issue as ever finally closed. The pragmatic method leads him to the view that scientific theories are instruments for future action rather than acceptable answers to questions about nature. His prominent work include The Principle of Psychology, published in 1890, and Pragmatism, published in 1907, along with The Will to Believe, published in 1897, and Essays in Radical Empiricism, published in 1912. Apart from pragmatism, James is known for his doctrine of radical empirism, which held that pure experience is the stud all things are made of. He suggested abandoning the notion of self-consciousness as an entity set over against the objects of the material world. There is nothing to go beyond what James calls pure experience. In his work titled Pragmatism, William James says, within quotes, "A pragmatist turns his back resolutely and once for all upon a lot of invertebrate habits dear to professional philosophers. He turns away from abstraction and insufficiency, from verbal solutions, from bad a priori reasons, from fixed principles, closed systems and pretended absolutes and origins. He turned towards concreteness and adequacy, towards facts, towards action and power. That means the empirist temper regnant and the rationalist temper sincerely given up. It means the open air and possibilities of nature as against dogma, artificiality and a pretense of finality in truth." James insists that the only real world is the world of real experience. In actual life, definite, concrete situations are there and these are to be met and solved. Answers which solved previous situations may not solve the present or future problems. Everything changes, grows and develops. Nothing is fixed, static and final. The world is not moving towards predetermined end. What happens next is not determined, but is contingent upon what has happened. Life is a succession of real struggles with real difficulties. William James suggests three connected use of his pragmatic method. Firstly, it may help to clarify obscure or ambiguous concepts. Secondly, it may enable us to differentiate or to identify hypotheses, according to whether we can find any conceivable differences in their consequences. And thirdly, it may enable us to reject as spurious hypotheses which have no practical consequences for us. James never claims that pragmatic method offers any definite answers to philosophical problems. Instead, it is a technique for locating those answers, whatever they may turn out to be. It puts constraints on philosophical inquiry but does not anticipate its outcome. It is an injection with which substantive doctrines in philosophy and elsewhere should be measured. For James, pragmatism meant more than a critical maxim for achieving clarity of meaning. It provided a method for resolving moral, religious and metaphysical problems, thereby freeing us from abstraction, insufficiency, from fixed principles, closed systems, and pretended absolutes and origins, and directing us to concreteness and adequacy, towards facts, towards action, and towards power. Pragmatism is a method of inquiry and a theory of meaning and truth derived from the natural sciences. It re-examined traditional philosophical problems by adopting empirico-pragmatic method with specific appeal to the pragmatic principle of verification and meaning. It was one such method which set aside metaphysical leanings and focused on practical life. Pragmatists were opposed to the notion of truth as fixed and absolute. Truth is relative and varies in accordance with time, place, and purpose. Pragmatism, popularly known as American pragmatism, was popularized by C.S. Peirce, William James, and John Dewey. They held that truth is ever changing in the light of new data. Pragmatism represents the spirit of youth, adventure, and experimentation. No philosophic ideas are true which cannot be put to some practical use. Pragmatism instills hope and promise.